What is going on, guys? Alex Thomas here. Welcome back for Sports Hour. This is going to be for going into week 9 this week, and it is a basically all divisional week. Most of the games are divisional, and a lot of these divisional games will be games that will decide whether a team can actually win their division in the case that they end up being tied. That is what's going on with this one here. I got the wrong one. Okay. And so that is the idea. So that's what's going to happen for this week. So we'll talk about the teams that are potentially still in it, and we'll talk about the game of the weeks and all the games of last week as well. So I was going to look at last week's games. Some of the games were pretty powerful, and some were pretty intense. We had the Panthers off with the Panthers and UNC. That game was actually a lot closer than it was expected to be. It was 141 to 101. And the Ravens and Pirates game was the second game that occurred. And yeah, the Pirates did win that game, won by 20. Tigers beat the Indians. The Jets demolished the Browns by almost 100. Lightning beat the Packers. The Knights won overtime versus the Huskies. The Foxes beat the Bears. Hawks beat the Dragons by a landslide. Otters beat the Athen. The Supermen barely won against the Warriors. The Legends beat the Tex. The Lynx won against the Beagles. The Bobcats demolished the Falcons. The Bulldogs won in overtime versus the Dogs. The Cardinals demolished the Colts. The Kings beat the Giants. In a close game, the Saints won against the Leland Cats. So the Leland Cats had their first loss of the season. In overtime, the Dolphins were able to beat out the Chargers. The Lions demolished the Stars. And the Angels were able to win off against the Werewolves. So divisionally, it's very interesting. So if the playoffs were to occur right now, this would be the current seeds. So currently, Foxes would make it into the playoffs as the 8th seed. On the other side, the Bobcats would make it into the playoffs, and then there'd be several teams that would be very close to the playoffs, but not quite there. Going into it, there are still several teams that are very high up there. If we get to look at some of these that are going to be occurring. But what's really powerful, the new NBO record list is, I think, up on the NBO listing. You can see all the records of games since 2017. They're not going to be updated from that point onwards, unless they are the most points scored by a team. Was able to get those, and you'll also say if the players are active, the players are, and what team the players played for. How many seasons they played, one of those things, those are available on there. It is, I think, going to be very interesting to see what happens in some of these games, because some of these games are going to be very close games, and some of them are going to be probably complete landslides. I, of course, do my predictions as well going into this. And we get to start off with the first game of the week. It is going to be the Cardinals and the Knights. That's not the first game, but it is the game that will be going first. Cardinals and Knights are in the same division. This is a divisional matchup. Now, earlier in the season, the Cardinals beat the Knights. So, if the Knights are to want to win the division, assuming that those two teams end up being tied, they have to win by 4 or more points. That's all they got to win. And they have to win by that, too. So if they lose, the Cardinals would beat them in the context of the division. The next game is the Foxes and Tigers. This should be a pretty good game. But honestly, both those games should be really close and very good. We have the Foxes and Tigers. Same sort of scenario here, though. The Tigers are up by 2 in that regard. So if they were tied at the end of the season, it will not make a difference because the Foxes currently have a 5-3 record. But if in the case they end up being tied, the Foxes need to win by 2 or need to win by at least 3 points. If they're able to do that, then they got it. They should be able to do it. But it's just going to require the Foxes beating the Tigers several minutes and also getting a lot more games onto it. The third game is going to be the Hawks and the Giants. They played. The Hawks are favored by 13 in that game. I should probably put the other ones up there, but the Hawks are favored by 13. Hawks are also need to win by 13. To lose by 13. So the Giants have to win by 13 in order to be able to make that possible for the Giants to actually win the division if those two teams were to face off against each other. Right now, the Giants and Hawks are pretty close in the context for it. Giants are currently 4-4. Hawks are 5-3. So if these two teams, if the Giants do end up winning, they'll probably end up flipping somewhat. But they do need to win by a bit in order to be able to win the division off of that. I'm going to go ahead and do my predictions off of these as well. I'm picking the Cardinals to win this game. I'm going to pick the Tigers to win that game. And I'm going to pick the Hawks to win that game. We got Otters and Huskies. This is not a divisional game. At least I don't believe it is. The Otters and Huskies are not in the same division. The Otters are 7-1 at this point. They're 13th in both positions. 96 points per game is their average score. The Huskies, on the other hand, are 5-3. Slightly worse. They're only scoring about 89 points per game. It is going to be a very interesting game, very close in the context between those two teams because they're both very strong teams. Now, the Otters winning the division would be a great position for the game of the week because they win, and then they'll be tied for first. If they lose, then either Lynx or Lions will be in first place at that time. It will be in first place for tie because of the context for it. I am going to say I like the Huskies' parameters for it. Huskies aren't that bad of a team. They're in a position where they're currently fit 22nd in offense and 5th in defense. But I think the R's are very heavily favored in this game. I think, honestly, that 17 might not be enough. Pirates and Dragons. It's another divisional game. We have the Pirates and Dragons. Unfortunately, the Pirates are currently 2-6. and the Dragons are 1-7. So both of them are nowhere near the top of the division. And their current division leader, the Kings, are 6-2 and also not in a very position. Neither one of these teams is in a position where they're going to even come close to making the playoffs. But in the case they do need to do it, the Dragons, the Pirates have to win by at least 10 points in order for that to occur. If they don't, then the Dragons will win against them, but the Dragons are behind right now. I am going to pick the Pirates to win this game. I think the Pirates do have a better chance of winning on a position, but it's going to be very difficult. We got the Werewolves and Leland Cats. This game is the Werewolves are not going to make playoffs. I'm not going to try to say that they're going to. They are in the same division. This is the second matchup. The Cats are up by 25. Yeah, so in the context here, I don't think there's a chance. I think the Leland Cats definitely win this game. In order for that to be even possible, the Werewolves have to go crazy in the context for it. And unfortunately, I don't think they have the chances of doing it. Me at the Werewolves right now, they got some great players, but the problem is their players are in a position where they're kind of going to be running out here. I mean, I got Stephen Summers, who is still a pretty good player, but unfortunately, I think the team itself is just not going to be good enough. They're not going to beat the Leland Cats, even if they're able to beat them. They're not beating them by 32, which means the Leland Cats will still have the division in the case that they end up tying. We got the Bulls and the Saints. Now this is going to be an interesting game. Bulldogs currently are 4-4. The Saints are 8-0. I hate to break it to the Saints, to the audience, but in order to win the division, they have to score 83 points. So I don't think they're going to do that. I definitely think the Saints are going to win this game. The Saints currently are 2nd and 4th versus the Bulldogs, who are right next to them, are still kind of hands. They're too far away, really, right now to actually win this game. I pick the Saints to win this game. Falcons and Angels. This is a Falcons and Angels game. Now, I can see this game being it. Falcons probably not making the playoffs. Angels might make the playoffs, but are unlikely to. Angels currently 3-5, 32-16. Angels have no wins and have a tie. In no scenario, I'm going to say, is it possible that the Falcons win this game. If they were to need to win, if they got a chance to win, they're in the same division. So this is one of those games Falcons would have to... That's not a divisional game that we're looking at. One second. Yeah, it's the wrong one. Let me take a look where that one is. This should be back in week. I think it was in week 3, and they won by. They're still the Angels need to act. We have to win. Yeah, they have to win by 42. So they have to win by 43 in order to have a chance. So even then, I don't think of a chance that the Falcons are going to be able to make the playoffs in the first place. They definitely will not make the playoffs if they lose this week. divisional, please. Yes. Okay. We're going to have our next game, which is the Bears and Ravens. This is Bears and Ravens. They're not divisional, so it will not make a difference. Bears are favored by a lot here. I'm going to say Bears are definitely winning this game. Ravens are still, Ravens are in a position right now that they're probably going to be out of the playoffs. Ravens right now last in the NBL. If they lose this week and several other teams win, they're probably out of the playoffs. They're probably not quite officially eliminated from the playoffs, but they're definitely eliminated from making it to the position because the best position they can get right now is against the Tigers, who are 8-0. And unfortunately, a win with if the Tigers do win, they cannot win that division. That's the one thing to note about that one. We got the Lightning and Bobcats. This should be a pretty interesting game. I don't think it's a divisional. No, it's not a divisional game. But Bobcats are favored by 10. This is a tough one because these two teams are very high in position needs. I would say it's 11-20 for the Lightning. As for the Bobcats, they're up there at 8-13. I think the Bobcats have a better chance of winning this game. I'm picking the Bobcats to win this week. I know that it's kind of split even. Athen and Jets. Okay, we already know the Jets are going to win this game. There's no ifs. I think the Athen and Jets, are they divisional? Yes, they are divisional. And I know that there's a chance. In fact, actually, it's impossible if even in the context, assuming the Athens somehow won this game, which they're not going to, most likely, they have so many points behind that it's because here's the thing: if the Jathans lose this week or any other week, it doesn't even matter this week. If they lose, they are eliminated from the position of winning the division. They're probably eliminated from the playoffs too. Looking at their position right now, they are currently at 0-7-1, which means technically they're not eliminated yet. But with the Bobcat, with everyone of the higher seeds winning, they would be eliminated. They would be likely eliminated, at least eliminated from making it to the actual playoffs. They're probably already going to be eliminated from the actual possibility of the wild card of actual position of being the division leaders, especially if they don't win this game. Warriors and Packers. Then this is a divisional game. Divisional game is going to be very tough because the context for it. Warriors and Packers. They're both in a very bad position. I don't think either one of them is going to make it wins the playoffs. But the Packers have to win this game by 46 points. Probably not happening. Packers do have a very good defense, but the problem is they can't keep their offense in line. They have 33rd in offense. And the problem is they're also kind of in a position. They're currently they're down there in 0-8. They're probably not making the playoffs in the first place. And with their division, all their divisional opponents, we have the Lions, the Otters, and the Lynx. All of them are 7-1. And the Lions, if either one of them play, and the problem is the Lions and the Lynx do play this week. So, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if the Packers lose. The Packers do lose, they will be eliminated from the division cap. They're probably eliminated from the playoffs too, but they might not quite be eliminated from the playoffs at that time because, let's see, because right now 6-2, they could technically still, assuming they win this week, go to 8-8. So they could technically still make the playoffs right now because neither of those teams are high enough. But it's very unlikely at this time. So I say the likelihood is they will probably not make the playoffs in the context there. But we will see. We have the UNC and the Dolphins. The Dolphins currently first place in their division, so they're already in the division leads. If there was some chance that UNC somehow was able to do it, they have to win by 29 points. And based on their actual offense and defensive stats, probably isn't happening. I didn't go back to this, did I? Athens and Jets, and it's I'm looking at the wrong one. I was looking at something completely different. It's the Superman Chargers we're talking about here. The Superman Chargers. They are in the same division. They're both actually pretty close to the top of the division, so I think this is physically possible. This could be the stuff here. Looking at this, though, the Superman and Chargers. The Supermen are up by 1, so the Chargers only have to win by 2 in order to win that division. To win that division, if it ended up being a tie at the end of the season. It's going to be a tough one for me to go ahead and say this game's going to be it. I am going to pick the Chargers to win this week. It's going to be very close, but I do think that the Supermen and Chargers are going to be a really big battle. I think the Supermen and Chargers are slightly better, but they're not. It's not that much of a difference. The Texans Colts is a completely irrelevant game, I believe. They're in the same division, but they're not going to be, it's not going to make a difference. The Texans Colts, Tex are currently 0-8, so if they lose, they're probably eliminated. They're currently dead last in the possibility here, and we have several other teams winning. If the Jets do win, there's actually, let's see, there's going to be 7 teams. If all 7 of those teams win, they will all be eliminated from the playoffs. But not quite eliminated yet. We'll have to look at that going into next week. But in that game, really not going to make much of a difference. I picked the Colts to win this game. I think there's a chance the Tex win that game, but unfortunately, not with the Tex current rating. Tex are currently 39th in offense. Versus the Colts, they're only 29th. Neither one of these teams is very good, but let's put it that way. Now we get to the Warriors and the Packers game. Warriors and Packers are in the same division, and again, I think I did mention this already. They're probably not going to do this. The Warriors have to win. So the Packers have to win by 46 points. In the context of the Packers do this week, they're probably eliminated from the playoffs. I am going to pick the Warriors to win this week. I really don't think this is going to be a very fun matchup. UNC and the Dolphins. Technically possible for the Dolphins to still lose the division, but unfortunately, UNC is just not going to be good enough in the context here. I am going to pick the Dolphins to win that week. It could be a close game, though. The Dolphins do have a much better defense, though, is why I'm thinking that. We have a game of the week we'll talk about in a little bit here. I'm going to skip that one for now. The Beagles and the Stars. The Beagles and the Stars are both at the very bottom of the league, and both of them are pretty bad. But I do think the Beagles actually win this game because of the context. The Bengals are currently 7th when it comes to defense. Neither none of them is very good at offense, and in my opinion, I think it's going to be the Beagles that win this game. Unfortunately, the Beagles are still going to be down there. Unfortunately, the Beagles are probably also not going to make the playoffs. They're pretty far down there, but with a win this week, maybe they can turn the season around. Knights and Indians. Okay, the Knights over here. Knights, Indians. Both of them could still do it in the context of making the playoffs and the very possible wins. Unfortunately, I just don't see the Indians are going to win this one. It's going to be the Kings that win this one. And unfortunately, the Indians are kind of in a position where they're not exactly eliminated, but they're not exactly in a position where they're going to make the playoffs. We have got the Legends and the Browns. Not a divisional game. Legends are 4-4, 25th and 15th, versus the Browns, who are I think dead last in their earnings. Yeah, they're welcome. They're second to their last. They're second to their last only to the Falcons. Yeah, the problem is the Browns are currently just 36 and 29 versus the Legends are actually in a position where it's neither one has very good defense. Oh, correction. The Legends are 15th overall. Offense is not really good for either one of them, but I'm going to pick the Legends. And finally, the Dogs and Panthers. This is another divisional game. Technically, if for some chance possible outcome, in the case where the Dogs somehow win this game, then they could, in theory, win the division with a tie if they're tied. Unfortunately, they have to score 237 points in order for that to even be a possibility. So, yeah, don't think that's likely, considering that the average for the Dogs is currently only 94. Panthers average is 136. Yeah, there's very little chance that the Dogs don't win this game. I would say that the Panthers definitely win this game. Back to our game of the week. Now, this is going to be a really powerful game. The game that happens on 11 o'clock on Saturday. This game is for the division. It really is. The only thing is that the winner of this game might not take the division. It depends on what happens to the Otters. If the Otters win, the Otters have the Huskies. That's not going to be an easy game to do with. Then it's very possible the Lions or the Lynx will not win the division. The winner of this game will be at minimum in second in the place in the division. And I suspect that if the Lions win, the Lions will stay in first. If the Lynx win, the Lynx might not be in first, or it might beat them ahead of them. But in this game, I'm going to say it's going to be very tough. I am going to pick the Lynx to win this game. They're favored by just a little bit. I think the Lynx have a slight advantage. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very tough game. And honestly, I feel like this game is going to be a nightmare for these two teams. Going on to that, I want to take a look. I think I can look at this. I think that's pretty much all for this week. I do know that I will have we'll have the basketball roster and records and playoff records and all those things will be put in one of the documents and a link to it. And there's a document that'll be linked to this one as to the one that I'm walking right now as well. I think if I were to decide who was to make it into the playoffs right now, I think it's very close. Final position, I will say there's two teams I think that are probably going to miss the playoffs. Unfortunately, I feel like the Kings are probably going to miss the playoffs. And I think the Falcons are going to miss the playoffs. Unfortunately, I think one of these teams will make one of these 4 teams will probably do it. I don't think it'll be the Giants, but it'll be up there. One of these two teams probably. As for everyone else, I don't think they'll do it. On the other side, it's so close, but I kind of suspect that these will be the teams that will make it to the playoffs. I'm questioning the Bobcats somewhat. Bobcats might get beaten out by one of these other teams, but I do think these will be the actual teams that will make the playoffs. Not looking at what I had before. That is all for this week's 4 Sports Hour. And I will say this, next week, week 10, is going to be a pretty big game because there is one game that is going to be huge. It will happen at 9 o'clock on Monday, on the Monday of the next one. The Panthers and Saints play. Both those teams, assuming both those teams are still undefeated, both those teams face off next week, which would be a really, honestly, I think would be the best. It would be the best in the week. Currently, already the game of the week. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on Sports Hour.